Yeah.
Okay. It's interesting for most people the fact that I'm not Japanese, not half Japanese, not a quarter, absolutely nothing Japanese. I'm from a small village, and since I was about 12, I've started to get interested in Japan and all the things I associated with Japan, mainly historically things, kimonos, prints, books, furniture, all the stuff that really makes life interesting. And he wanted me to do a chat to sort of explain a bit about how that works. When you're in the middle of nowhere, you find an interest in a country that you've never been to, you've never seen, never heard about, you never had any contact with. You end up being, over time, because we're talking about 50 years ago that started, you end up with a collection of things that you've collected over the years, bit by bit. And how that works, because everybody automatically assumes that you spend a lot of money, that you go there often, and sometimes it's not necessarily the case. It's also not necessarily always necessary. The thing started with me that I had to do a project at school, and the project was about volcanoes. And in those days we didn't have internet, we didn't have huge libraries where we could go to, at least not where I lived. And what did we do, or what did I do at that moment in time? I wrote to all the countries that I knew of that had volcanoes, and one of them was Japan. And everybody sent me flyers and information, but the Japanese embassy at that time sent me a whole book about this thick with all kinds of details about modern Japan, and we're talking about the 60s now, so it was already pretty modern then, a long time ago. And that somehow interested me. It took me to investigate a bit more, do another project, but then about Japan, and from that came interesting prints and all kinds of other stuff. But you're young, you don't have a lot of money, so you try to save up some money and buy some small items, which were hard to find because in those days we didn't have so many Japanese shops, especially not in the area where I live. But you do your best, you try and find some stuff. Again, internet didn't exist yet, really. And it came to a point that I started working in a bigger town, started saving up money, and the first thing I did was go to Japan and actually see all this wonder by myself, in real life. There's where I bought my first kimono, that ended up later on part of a collection of about, well, at least 80 uchikake, the wedding kimonos, and about 200-300 other styles of kimonos. I ended up doing a little shop in Madrid, where I have lived for a while. We did exhibitions of my kimono collection in the Japanese garden in Buenos Aires, where we lived for a while as well, because life pulls you in different directions. The interesting thing is though that everything that I bought by then or had collected by then, that included furniture, screens, and all kinds of other stuff, things that are normal day-to-day things in a traditional Japanese household. You drag everything with you, and considering that the collection has travelled more possibly than many people in certain countries, thinking that it all came from Japan, was transported to the UK, from the UK it went to Italy, from Italy back to the UK, from the UK to Spain, back to the UK, back to Spain, out to Argentina, coming back from Argentina, back to the UK, back to Spain, and a whole lot of stuff is now in Spain. It's furniture, all kinds of stuff that is part of the collection. The interesting thing is that one of the things that interested me most was kimono, because at the time they were reasonably priced still, at least. Nice kimonos, good quality, were still available. I found those not only in other countries, but specifically in this establishment here, where David's parents had their kimono, well, not kimono shop, their antique shop. And there were a few wedding kimonos there, which I still have now. I went one day to buy one, cost me an awful £125 at the time, which was a lot of money in those days. And 2 days later I came back to buy the second one, and that's how the collecting of kimonos actually started, which is quite interesting when you think about it. And from that I ended up having about, at one stage, about 100, I think, of uchikake only. They were shown, a lot of those, in Buenos Aires, which is very nice to do. And from there you start trying to get a bit more creative. I had a website at the time, but one of the things I did do when I was bored at one stage, and probably it was around COVID, everybody so fondly remembers that he did not know what to do, he couldn't do anything. And I created these tiny little kimonos here in Lego as a tiny idea of what to do with my time and do something a tiny bit more original. For those that are interested, there is an Instagram account where you can see more samples of things that are built in Lego. These are actually been exhibited in Madrid a couple of weeks ago in a Lego shop. It's something different that you can do with Lego. It's not typical Lego, but we have a Tomosoda and a Furisoda here as samples of the style of kimonos. They're a bit more in black and white, but any colors can be made in Lego, as you probably know. I assume everybody knows what Lego is.
Yeah.
Just in case.
It's Danish, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. But I had it since I was 6, so what I've been doing is combining my passion for Lego, combining it with my passion for Japan. And then you get things like this. And I can animate anybody to do so. It's really fun.
You've got a whole attic full of it.
No kids to play with.
Our son was in Japan with me for the Rugby World Cup 5 years ago, and he's got many yukatas and kimonos, and but now his room is full of Lego space shuttle, space landers, and Japanese castles.
That's how it should be.
He must meet you.
Has he bought the Himeji one already?
He has, yes.
It's a nice one actually. It's very pretty. It's very pretty. I can recommend Lego to anybody, and I can recommend Japan to anybody. There you go. Another thing that happened over time is that I started to collect prints or books of prints where possible, because they interest me as an object, like the same as a kimono. I don't put kimonos on like some people every single time ask me to. Even Gail wanted me to wear one today, but that was a big no-no because I'll probably tear them up with the size of body that I have. But I see them as objects on the wall. So our living room is full with kimonos, just have something nice and colourful and different on the wall. And it works really well because if you hang a kimono up, you take a nice pole from one side, one armpit to one arm to another arm. You should get a T or a square shape if you open them up at the bottom. And it's like a painting, like any other painting. And there's so many different colours, so many different styles and variations. We can always talk about that, so we won't start on that subject because then you're not out of here for the next 3 hours. But what I did find is that there is sometimes very little information about the history of Japan or Japanese. There's a lot of information about the history of Japan. But what you find harder to find is the basis of how the kimono actually was developed over time. There are some books, the Hinagata that David was talking about, that provide a lot of information. And it's very interesting to see how that develops over time. While we're still talking about similar or the same subject, we do talk about changes in the style that they would produce them and how they would make them visible. And I found it very sad that these books are barely available, and if you find them, they're actually quite costly. So what I've done, and there's just a bit of a sort of promo here, but what I found interesting to do is find out the ones that I have myself and put those in book form so that other people could actually enjoy them as well. And from that is this series that has been developed, that are basically the original images of the kimonos, the kimono design books that have been put into a format that you can simply buy them for a nice affordable price, and you can use them as coloring books, or you can use them as inspiration or study books for kimono designs. And that's actually the whole idea behind this project that I did, and that came out of my collecting over time. You know? So there are different books starting at 1688 until about 1900, and they're all available for an easy price. People can enjoy them, they can scratch them, they can tear them apart, but they can enjoy the original designs that were made for those days and that are original from those periods. Basically also to see what Japanese design is over time and how that is influenced by different things. Like you see different designs towards the 1900s that you see when you talk about the 1680s, even if they are the same subject. And that's actually quite interesting to do. So from my hobby of collecting kimonos and being interested in Japanese items came a series of books that you can find on Amazon now if you're interested. Not that you have to buy them, but it is a project that has developed into now 34 books that are available to everybody, because these books are hard to find. And I think it's nice to share that interest the same way as I did exhibitions in the Japanese garden in Buenos Aires. And it'd be lovely to find more places, but one of the things that is difficult is to find places where they can do that or want to do that in the first place. And I'm an unknown collector, and that makes it even more difficult sometimes. That's why David offered me the possibility to talk about it, because it's fun to talk about things that we're all interested in. How does that sound?
Yeah.
Are you enthusiastic now? You become collectors.
Some of us really are.
Any, that's how it should be. Any questions, particularly? I mean, I can go on for hours, and you all need to go back to your drinks and your food, so I don't want to bore you to death.
How do you keep those kimono? Because in Japan, to keep a kimono, you have to be Katoshi, and you put in a kiri no dance. It's quite, and every year we have to open it at least, and then mushi. So it's quite, you know.
Yeah, I'm getting a bit blunt with that now because there's so many years and they've moved all over the place. Mainly, I've got them in tansu, the wooden furniture pieces that are specifically for kimono, because they will avoid that any bugs will come in and start eating them up. I put them in plastic bags to avoid other bugs to come in as well, and that helps. And for the rest, I use shelving, because I haven't got that much space for so many tansu. I used to have less than I used to have, but I have now less than I used to have. But yeah, it is a worry. Funny story, but not really funny. We moved to a certain place, and somehow there is a bug there that loves old silk and that loves straw somehow. I had a collection of 25 Hinagata sets, the Hina sets for Girls' Day, old ones. Early Meiji, Taisho, that sort of period, around 1900. And we got visited by these bugs and they started eating my collection. Yeah, dolls, protecting those is really hard, and they get into absolutely everything. Talking about kimonos, what happened at one stage, and that was quite amazing. I had a pile of kimonos in a plastic container with a lid on it. They managed to get themselves in that particular plastic container. In the container were various kimonos from Meiji to a bit later and a bit earlier, and the little creatures actually went down 5 levels of kimonos, 5 kimonos that were piled on top of one another, to look for the most tasty kimono that they could find, which was a Meiji period hand-painted kimono, and started happily eating away while they let the rest just sit there. So they went 5 layers down in that box. I mean, we're talking about this amount of space to eat that kimono half away. The only thing I have now left is a few pieces that I've put in the frame. There's always something you can do with a bit of kimono anyway, and you never have enough kimonos. But yeah, that was a bit sad, but that's life. Comes and goes, things begin, things end. But be careful with that, but pack it all in plastic, because that is one of the better.
You'll be okay here because the North London clothes mob mostly likes wool.
Yeah.
There are woolen kimonos though. No, there's a lot out there.
They've eaten all my suits. Sorry, do it.
I know how you feel. You know how I feel, even if I wasn't putting them on.
So how many kimono do you think you have in your collection? I know it's a lot. Have you any
I've not
idea?
counted them lately, and I've got them in time. I've tried to sell a few because I don't really have any space, but I think I still have another 80 of Chikaka somewhere hidden away, and it's I've tried to make it quite varied what I've got left, because I used to have a little shop where I sold, but obviously not the big ones because they were basically no space. But the collection ended up being, Uchikaka was my main collection with everything that went with it. There's some videos on YouTube if you're ever interested. Theatre kimonos, priest kimonos, male, female, smaller size kimonos, tomosodo, furisodo. A variety of different ones, but I think at the moment it should be about 200-300 or so, somewhere hidden, including obviously belts, always, and other stuff. The problem is when you collect, there is never enough. You know, there's always another kimono that you want. There's always another color, another design, another technique, and even if and then what you want to do is share them. And I think that's the message I'm trying to say, is that what is always been interesting for me is to be able to share them, that people can see these things, because they just pieces of art, as far as I know. Any other questions? In that case, I hope you enjoyed it. And that you start collecting as well. No, I've been at it for a few years. I hope you enjoyed the little chat. I was asked to do a little chat. So
Thank you.